It gives me great pleasure to introduce our first keynote. With the keynotes, we try to make them about a variety of different topics, so things that are maybe adjacent to APIs. And I think that's the case with our first keynote. We've got Professor Marek Kowalkiewicz. So Professor Marek is a professor and chair in the digital economy at Queensland University of Technology Business School. Professor Marek is previously senior director at SAP, and was based in Silicon Valley as well as in Asia, working in a variety of different SAP research labs as well as Microsoft research labs. Marek holds 15 patents in his contributions to enterprise software systems. So Marek is going to be talking about the economy of algorithms and asking the very pertinent question, are algorithms our friends? So please join me in welcoming Professor Marek Kowalkiewicz.
Thank you, Saul. I was trying to locate the clicker. If anyone knows where the click, oh, fantastic. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your time. My name is Marek Kowalkiewicz, and I wanted to ask you a question. Imagine you get to work in the morning and you receive an email that says you're fired. Right? A good start of the day. You're fired. Well, if you're the most efficient employee in the world, you become so efficient that you effectively do nothing at work. Should you be expecting to get fired, or shouldn't you? I found this Reddit message a few years ago, 2016, and I decided to do a bit of digital forensics and find out more about Filet-O-Fish, the Reddit user who acknowledged to being fired after 6 years of effectively doing nothing at work. Now, there's one thing I don't know about Filet-O-Fish, and that's Filet-O-Fish's gender. In some messages, Filet-O-Fish would say, I'm hanging out with the boys, chugging beers after the gym and so on. Make your own conclusions. I will assume Filet-O-Fish is a male, just easier for me to talk about it. So when I found this message, I started to dig a bit deeper, and I realized that this person was a really interesting case. Filet-O-Fish graduated from a California university with a GPA of 2.3. That's really low. Still, that was in 2009. There was, a very, very hot job market. He got hired by a small startup in Silicon Valley. By the end of his 6 years at the startup, that startup was really, really big. Again, I don't know the name of the startup, but from what I could find out, it's one of those that we would recognize immediately. And so, by the time when he got fired, or until that time, he never really spoke to any other employees of that startup. Can you imagine that, right? He would just rock up at work, get the job done, and then go back home or to the gym to chug beers with the boys. Basically, Filet-O-Fish did something that a lot of Silicon Valley employees would do immediately. 8 first months of his at work, he would try to automate everything possible. Filet-O-Fish was a quality assurance engineer, right? So he would basically take the code written by others and check for errors. You can write tests. You know yourselves that it's possible to automate this type of activities. Basically automated his own job by writing a set of programs. And, after that, he would just do nothing. These are quotes that I could find from, Filet-O-Fish sharing that. If your initial reaction to this slide is, it's cheating, that's wrong, I hope that by the end of the presentation you will change your mind. Because what we're seeing here, ladies and gentlemen, is a profound change to what is happening in our workplaces and, a profound change to how we need to think about work. And a manager, for 6 years, didn't realize what was happening. Now, I teach at a business school. I work with MBAs. This is probably not the typical leadership style that we promote. But hey, it works for Filet-O-Fish. It didn't really was a problem for the boss. In a twist, in a very, very interesting twist, it was the IT, the people who are there to help organizations run smoothly, that found fillet of fish's behavior deviant and then escalated it to the boss, right? Again, we know why, but it's really interesting that it's the IT people that flag those who automate themselves and say, this is wrong, you shouldn't be doing that. So what is happening here? Basically, fillet of fish had a people manager. What do people managers do? They manage people. If those people start not to do people things, but they do computer things or automated things, people managers don't know how to react. And they go into knee-jerk reactions and they fire employees. Now, this is not the only example that I've seen of cases of automation and then someone being threatened with being fired. But a lot of other examples that I've seen would end up with employees being actually promoted, giving more opportunities to grow the business. Why is that? Because the people managers were overruled by business managers. Business managers who understood that their people can actually help grow the business. So it's not bad for the people. No one would get fired in the right organization. Instead, the skills of people who know how to automate their work get used to grow this organization. Why is it happening right now? Why wasn't I talking about it 10, 20 years ago? Because there's an interesting time happening right now. We live in a world where literally every day we're seeing amazing progress in what algorithms can achieve. And it starts to look like something out of science fiction. This is not Star Trek video. This is a video that was created 2 weeks ago by a movie director who used the DALL-E system. You know DALL-E, right? The system that can generate images based on text prompts to create a virtual fashion show. This is created by a person who has no idea about fashion. They just happen to have access to a model, an artificial intelligence model, that is able to generate designs like that based on text prompts. When we see that, to me, that looks like magic, but it's not. This is already happening. There's a challenge with this. When people start to see, especially people from outside the IT industry, see algorithms that do things like this, they start to think, well, they can be autonomous. We can let them do all sorts of things, and then we can sit back and do nothing. We in this room know what problems this might cause, right? It's not as simple as that. It's a bit like if you bought a Tesla and decided to just put it in a self-driving mode and went to the back row, right? Some of us not in this room would have made it, right? They're not in this room anymore. So I think that it's a very interesting comparison. When you think about 6 levels of automation of autonomous cars, so level 0, no automation. Level 1, hands-on. You might have ABS and maybe cruise control. Level 2, hands-off. So sticking into the lane, adaptive cruise control. Level 3, you can have your eyes off. So every now and then you can just look away. Level 4, you can have your mind off. So you can maybe read a book, and when a car needs your help, it will ask for the help. And level 5, fully autonomous, there's no need for a driver. We could think about very similar levels for software as well. We've been doing a lot in the space of level 0, 1, and 2, perhaps level 3, but we're seeing a lot of systems right now that are moving to level 3, level 4. Not too many in level 5, and that's probably a discussion for another conversation. But I would ask you to think about your systems, your APIs, whether you manage them, whether you deploy them, whether they're level 3 or level 4. So we're seeing more and more of this automation. Now, there will be some skeptics in the room, and you'll say, sure, we've done this automation for years, 10, 20 years. Of course. And I have an example for you. This is a screenshot from Amazon from 2011, April in 2011. Showed up in a blog post titled, "The Most Expensive Book in the World. The Making of a Flight, The Genetics of Animal Design," paperback. $2,198,177.95 plus $3.99 shipping. A PhD student was trying to buy that book. They didn't have enough budget, so they escalated it to the supervisor, and the supervisor decided to investigate. What's happening here? There was a book where only a couple of copies were available. Two bots, one of them called ProfNath, the other one called Bordybook, were selling the book. Only one of them had the book. That was ProfNath. Now, ProfNath had an interesting strategy. It's a bot, software agent. ProfNath would look for another seller and then undercut the price. Basically, ProfNath would advertise the price of the book at 99.83% of the price of the other seller. So basically, ProfNath was trying to sell to people who look for the cheapest book, right? And then there was Bordybook, really interesting. Bordybook did not have the book. Bordybook thought, if someone wants to buy a book from me, I'll just try to sell it for a much higher price, and if they buy it from me, I'll just buy it from ProfNath and redirect to the buyer. So 27% margin over the price of ProfNath. Let me do a bit of walking. Starting price of the book, let's say $100. ProfNath says $99. Bordybook says $127. Then 99%, 27%, 99%, 27%, 99%, 27%. That's how we get to $2,198,000, right? Wrong. That's how we get to $23,698,000, 655.93 plus $3.99 shipping, right? That was the highest price that this book reached. That was on the 18th of April 2011. The following day, the owner of ProfNath's bot realized what was happening, dropped the price to $106.23, and Bordybook followed, $134.97. So it all restarted. So we started, we were doing this automation before, but we didn't really know how to do it properly, and we made a lot of mistakes. How's it going right now? Look at this. That's from just a few weeks ago. This gentleman, Botterboy Nova, is using a bot that he found on the web to buy sneakers, right? Very rare copy or item, just there's a drop of sneakers, he needs to buy them. He's using a bot that tries to buy it hundreds of times. Look what's happening right now. The bot is asking him to do some captchas because, bots are not good at captchas, but they can hire humans. A bot is hiring a human to do a captcha. And here you go. We just bought 2 pairs of sneakers. He's a reseller, so he will get those sneakers and resell them. $200 earned in just a few minutes with this type of automation. That's slightly smarter than Bordybook and ProfNath, wouldn't you agree? And these are so-called AIO bots all in one. So they can basically find a product, add it to the cart, enter payment information, check it out, get it sent, right? They do everything for you. That's happening right now, in case you didn't know. And there are others. If you try to buy PlayStation 5 for your family in the past 2 years, you know it's not possible. Well, not for Dakosa, which claims at the time of this screenshot that it bought 27,000 PlayStation 5s to get them resold to humans, right, later on. It failed at 1,300 times. This is the world right now. This is the world in which we have software bots, software agents competing with us in the markets for things that we want to do as humans. And in case this is not amazing enough, the demand for these bots is so high that there are marketplaces, effectively temp agencies for bots. If you want to hire a bot, just like you want to hire an employee, you just go to a website. This is just one example, Bot Broker, and you say, I have $200. Could I use this bot, CyberSoul, because I need to buy from this and that particular website? This is not science fiction. This is happening right now. If it's not mind-blowing to you just yet, let's move to the next slide. This. Now, before I say a word about it, this is not a presentation about Web3, blockchains, cryptocurrencies, and so on. Still, there's something absolutely mind-blowing happening in the Ethereum community at the moment. It started 2015 or early 2016. The community started to build so-called DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations. Think about DAOs as basically a set of algorithms. Technically, they're called smart contracts, but it's software that are deployed on the Ethereum blockchain, which for the purposes of the exercise, and I think I can use some technical language here, is basically a distributed virtual machine. So you're throwing this algorithm on the Ethereum blockchain, and it runs, but you don't know where. It just runs on some machines in that network. It's not like in the cloud, in Amazon cloud, where you know where the data center is. It's running somewhere on the Ethereum network. And you just deploy it, and you sort of free-range algorithms. You just release it. As long as the algorithm can pay for itself, and as you know, the crypto community has all sorts of ways of collecting funds and distributing them. As long as it can pay for itself, so for the resources it's using, it is a truly autonomous algorithm. Those DAOs that we see here, these are organizations that have no people working in them. In some areas of the world, some states in the US, they're a legal entity at the moment. They do not have a CEO. They do not have a single employee. All of the processes are encoded in smart contracts and are running like that. Now, for those of you who know some of those organizations, you know they're a bit like ProfNav and Bordybook. The DAO, the one in the upper left, was the first one that launched. It was a virtual venture capital. So basically would collect funds from anyone and then distribute it to fund projects. People would vote on projects, but it still wouldn't have any employees. $150 million in Ethereum collected within the first few weeks. A couple of weeks later, $50 million stolen by hackers. Right? That led to a hard fork in Ethereum that you might have heard about. The point was the code that the software developers wrote was not solid enough. They made a few mistakes. Talk to me after the break. They created, or during the break, they created something that I would call an infinite ATM. You could sort of put in $100 and then take it out as many times as you wanted, right? So that's how the hackers stole the money from the fund. So a very, very simple mistake. Then there was Constitution DAO quite recently, a community that collected money to buy a rare copy of the US Constitution. I think about $40 million. I might be missing a zero there. Check me on this one. Basically, they lost. They came second at an auction. Problem with DAOs are that they're basically open to communities. So everyone knows how much money, everyone knew how much money Constitution DAO had. That's actually not a good strategy if you're at an auction, right? So that's why they came second. Krause House is trying to buy an NBA team. They still haven't managed to, but they bought a small basketball team at a very weird league that I think Ice-T created. It gets even weirder. Lynx is a virtual golf course that's trying to build a real golf course, and I missed City DAO, the green one over there. They built a piece of land in the US, and now they're trading smaller pieces of that land and creating like a virtual city. The one on the left, a bit ominous logo, that's a bit of a meta DAO. That's a DAO that's used to fund Ethereum development, Moloch DAO. Those, all of them, are not agents like Bordybook or ProfNav. These are entire organizations that are algorithmic, and they are interacting with our world. Now, B2B type of systems, do you think they have any APIs? Nope. There's not even a conversation right now just yet about APIs between those systems, though some of you might be aware there's a group called API3.org that's trying to let those guys talk to traditional APIs. Check them out, API3.org. So that's the world that we're seeing at the moment. So let's do a tiny bit of recap. By the way, I would be watching this space. This could be the next great space for APIs, or could be a total failure, but you have to be watching this. So a tiny bit of recap. When I was studying business and economics, it was late 90s, early 21st century, it was all about what we call now the economy of corporations, right? So corporations were the thing, right? This was the agent in the economy. We were only focusing on how to grow corporations, how to create them, how to optimize them, and so on. In the last 20 or 30 years, with the rise of the internet, we saw the rise of platforms that made people as powerful as corporations. Some of you might be competing with large organizations thanks to the platforms that have been created through internet and similar technologies. My point today is that we're seeing a third type of agents emerging in our economy, and these are algorithms that are not just tools that humans use, but often fully autonomous agents that do work on our behalf. In most cases, there are very, very few exceptions. They do the work on our behalf. Now, if it was just algorithms, obviously that wouldn't be enough. So just as a sort of tiny reminder, it's a bit like desirability, feasibility, viability. In this case, we're talking about the economy of algorithms enabled by the networks that we have. If we didn't have the internet, those algorithms couldn't roam freely and interact with businesses as easily as they can right now. And we also need business models, the picture on the right, where it needs to make financial sense for those algorithms. So these are not just toys. In the 90s, we would probably be building toys like that. But right now, these are tools that are used for business. So we do have those algorithmic agents with us. And you would be using them. I'm using them all the time. We're using assistants. I used to use X.AI, which was, I hired Amy and Andrew for $9 a month to interact with my students via email. Natural language, a student would request a meeting with me, Andrew or Amy would respond, say, what about this date, what about that date, and then put it in our calendars and so on. So interacting with humans on one hand and interacting with backend systems on the other hand, right? Really, really interesting. Managers, if you got an Uber, the driver was given the job by an algorithm. If the driver drops in rating, the algorithm will stop assigning jobs to the driver. So we have algorithmic managers already now. And again, of course, they deal with, they work with all of the backend systems. We have buyers, sellers, just like we saw these examples. We have social media coordinators, which post on our behalf on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever other backend systems we might have. I showed you a designer algorithms. I'm finishing a book at the moment, and I got GPT-3 to write a few paragraphs in the book. If you buy the book, I bet you will not be able to find the paragraphs that were written by the algorithm, right? I'll put a disclaimer in the book. I'll explain which ones were written by the algorithm, but you can imagine that's actually pretty stressful for university professors. If you get students to use GPT-3 to write their essays or co-write their essays, right? No plagiarism system will find it, right? Because that text never existed before, okay? You didn't hear me say that. Coders, maybe not the most beautiful code, but there are systems that can create initial code for us to improve. We have fitness coaches. My watch is telling me to get up and move every few hours and so on. And we have more of that. And we have more of that, right? And those systems, some of those agents are self-sufficient. They could sit on your phone like a translator maybe, don't need to talk to any backend systems. But most of those agents will have to interact with some backend systems. Some of them will be locked into just one, right? Maybe, I don't know, Duolingo, right? Interacting with just that backend system of Duolingo. But there will be others, like the social media coordinator that I might have, that will have to talk to LinkedIn and Twitter and maybe Facebook and so on and so on. How do they interact with those systems? Right? How do they? So in the B2B world, you know it very well, APIs are helping us, to talk between organizations. Absolutely fantastic. Look, I worked for SAP for many, many years. When API Days was starting in 2012 in France, I was in Singapore there, and we were just hoping that you guys would come to Singapore. You finally came, thank you. But back then, we were with you on this, right? We were agreeing that APIs are the future, and they are, right? And that's an amazing, amazing world. For the B2C, we have more of a human-computer interaction, right? UIs, the web are sort of helping us work with backend systems. That's how humans interact. And of course, a lot of businesses are trying to protect it, to make sure that B2C is like that. That's why we have CAPTCHAs. But what if we said, maybe that's not the only way we want to interact in this sort of B2C world? What if we said, hey, it is a B2C world, but what if I was represented by an agent? What is the way of communicating here, right? So let's call it B2A, business to algorithm, or business to algorithmic agent. What is the way here? Now, I don't have an answer to this one. I think this is the answer that we need to figure out ourselves. But even before, I go a tiny bit deeper into that, I need to fix that image, because I already told you that except for very, very, very few cases, all of the algorithms that I have seen work on people's behalf. Yes, they also work on corporations' behalf, but you know that world, that's sort of like API brokerage and so on. But in most cases, the model looks a bit like this, B2A to C, business to algorithm to customer. When we look at it like this, the question becomes, if APIs are enabling business networks, then what enables algorithmic agent networks, or however we want to call them? What's on the right, it's easier. Most likely it'll still be some form of a UI, human-computer interaction. But what's on the left? It's a really, really compelling question. Now, the examples that I showed you, that we've seen, are mixed. The guys buying sneakers using sneaker bots, those bots are basically doing, call it API over UI, right? So they're basically trying to interact with a backend system through scraping an HTML page and doing all of that, pretending to be a human. But what if we actually created a dedicated way for those algorithms to interact with backend systems? It's already happening. Say Amazon Dash replenishment service, they're using an API in this way, but it's a proprietary service. A wonderful way of, for the business, but perhaps, the community has different types of answers. So I believe we need to, as the API community, to address this question, ask ourselves, are we in a position of solving that left side of the picture that I show you? Will APIs power the economy of algorithms? This is the question that I would ask you, whether this is going to be the future. And if you think that it is, I have a couple of interesting challenges that I think we could already start addressing in the world that's happening right now. This is not a talk about future, this is a talk about today. Here's one example. If you have an Apple Watch and you take a hard fall right now, it will dial 000, and it will, with a synthesized voice, say, the owner of this watch has taken a hard fall. The GPS coordinates of this person are, and then provides the GPS coordinates. Imagine being a dispatch person on the other end and having an old school system in front of your keyboard where you don't have a field to enter GPS coordinates. That's exactly the case that we had a few months ago in the US, where a person has fallen, couldn't become unconscious. The watch called the dispatch person, 000. Thankfully, that person was able to use Google Maps, find out what the location was, and then put it back into the system. So we call it human APIs, don't we, right? Where we sort of bring two systems together through a human. But could we get an API over UI, right? Maybe there's a way when this watch calls a dispatch center to, at the same time, communicate that information digitally. So perhaps a system listening over to the phone conversation can quickly translate it. It's a bit like, for those of you who grew up in the 80s, teletext on TVs, where you would watch TV, but at the same time, there would be a digital text sent to your TV that you wouldn't see, you wouldn't hear, but the TV could get, right? Maybe that's a solution, maybe not, but it's an interesting question. How do we consume this type of communication from agents? Or this one, that's a flip side, UR over API. Have you seen this one? Cruise, autonomous taxi in San Francisco, got stopped by police, right? The police sort of went to the car, noticed there's no driver, went back to his own car to figure out what to do, and then the car just made a runner, right? So, look, there's clearly an API. The HQ could stop the car. The passenger on the inside, they'll have a big red button. They can stop the car, but the police cannot, right? There's no way for them to stop that. We don't have those solutions. So there is an API, but there is no UI. That's another example of this sort of B2A to C type of relationship that we're happening. A couple more before I'm done. This is something that I'm very, very passionate about. How do you advertise to a fridge? That's actually a question that my mother asked me when I told her what I'm working on. And I said, you know, working on those smart fridges that can buy stuff when you run out of it. And she said, but how do you advertise to a fridge? You know, if you need milk, how can you advertise your milk to the fridge so the fridge buys your milk and not your competitor's milk? I love this question because, you know, it comes back to what I call behavioral economics for robots. Trying to reverse engineer algorithms and recognize how they work to get them to buy from you. All right? If you think this is science fiction, again, it's not. This is exactly how Google Ads work. All those SEO experts are basically trying to figure out how to position yourself, you know, understand the algorithm, and how to get positioned on top of the page. That's already happening. To me, the question is this a question for the API community? Should we try to work on ways and approaches to this type of business questions? Or there could be legal challenges such as, well, how do you sell to a washing machine? This is a washing machine that you can buy already now. This washing machine will purchase washing detergent on your behalf every time it runs out of it. You don't have to buy it anymore, right? It will figure out that it's running low on it. It will get it delivered, you know, one-day delivery to your door. It won't be creepy at all. You will open the door and there'll be washing detergent. It won't be creepy because you bought that machine and you configured it like that. So you will be happy that it's happening. But hey, if I showed this slide in Europe, everyone would be angry because this slide shows how you're locking in, you know, one retailer to, you know, or, you know, a buyer to one retailer, right? Antitrust, you know, case immediately, right? In US, in Australia, we're still happy to see that. But, you know, but everywhere else, well, in Europe, they will say, how do you open up this market? For me, that's an excellent question. There's a proprietary protocol here at the moment. APIs could step in, or the API community could step in and say, we're going to create an open standard for this type of interactions, and we'll work with, you know, legal professionals to make sure this works. I think that's a fantastic opportunity there as well. So look, all in all, what we're talking about here is this emergence of the economy of algorithms that, in my view, is creating fantastic questions, opportunities, perhaps some challenges for the API community. We no longer have just businesses and people being economic agents, but also algorithms. And to me, the question is, can the community, the API community, power the economy of algorithms? And I would like to finish with this question, leave it to you as a challenge perhaps, and ask you, maybe this could become the motto of API Days in 10 years from now, not just powering the business networks, but also powering the economy of algorithms. I really can't wait to see whether it's going to be this motto or not. Thank you very much.